Well, welcome everyone. I'm Liddy Barbrick, and I am the Senior Admissions Counselor at UWS, and I'm going to be leading this today with our program directors for the Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine program. Just welcome to the webinar. For today's webinar, we're going to get the program directors' thoughts on some different aspects of the program, get their insight, why someone would pursue this field, some key highlights and features to the program, and then we'll open up for questions from the audience at the end. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can drop those in the Q&A, and you'll be able to get those answered at the end. So to start off, we are just going to do some introductions. So I introduced myself, but if Dr. Brown, Dr. Redwood, you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Redwood. I have been at University of Western States for 11 years. Our master's program has been in existence for 13 years, and I practiced as a chiropractor for 25 years with a strong emphasis on nutrition, and have been a professor at one institution before this one, and like I said, 11 years here and enjoying it still.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Dr. Chris Brown. I have been with UWS for 11 years as well. I started as an adjunct faculty member and then transitioned to a full-time role about a year after that. My pathway really began as a UWS alumnus, where I found that in practice as a chiropractor, I really wanted more strategies to address the underlying chronic complex illnesses that my patients were bringing me. And so that led me to go back to school with UWS to be in the first cohort in this master's program for human nutrition and functional medicine, which really transformed my practice into a very functional medicine centric, nutrition centric kind of practice approach, which helped my patients, helped me to better understand what they needed from me, and led to an interest in teaching. And so that set me on a faculty path that has continued ever since. And I am pleased to be in my 10th year full time with UWS, teaching and doing administrative work.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you both so much. Now we can move on to the program offerings just to give people an idea if they're not already familiar with the different departments, or sorry, the different programs that this department has at UWS. So we have a Master's of Science in Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine, a Doctor of Clinical Nutrition, and a Graduate Certificate of Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine. So we'll talk a little bit more about functional medicine on the future slides, but these functional medicine degree programs are really designed to integrate both clinical tools and resources from the IFM through our partnership. So that's one thing we'll highlight in a bit. But for anything specific to prerequisites, eligibility, more questions, please feel free to contact admissions. We're going to go over some other areas that the program directors can give more insight on, but anything admissions related is such good questions to bring up to our counselors to meet with someone directly to find out which program is the best fit for you. So for example, if you have a master's in nutrition and have completed that and want to continue your education, the doctorate might be a good fit. And we can kind of meet with you individually to go over which one's the best fit and which ones you're eligible for. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and chat a little bit more about these programs and just the purpose and mission of each one. So we won't read through all of this, but this gives you a good idea of who which program is the best fit for which group. So as you can see for the masters, for current or future nutrition professionals, for the DCN current nutrition professionals, again, that have a master's in nutrition, want to continue, and then our graduate certificate for healthcare professionals, not necessarily nutrition, but want to add that to their practice. So that's a brief overview. But for the program directors, I'm curious, one question we get all the time is, I don't have a master's in nutrition, but I want to do the doctorate. Can you kind of share why it's for that specific group of individuals with a master's in nutrition and why that's beneficial for them?
Absolutely. I appreciate that question. And the Doctor of Clinical Nutrition program was built from the ground up around the assumption that all entering students are beginning from a similar starting point, having that advanced master's level background in nutrition, potentially having clinical experience as nutrition focused practitioners. That's not required, but the academic background is because we wanted to make sure that all of our students have a set of tools and a foundation of knowledge that we can then build on. Part of the reason that that's important is that we wanted to build the DCN program to be an accelerated kind of program. It's a doctoral program that can be completed, that is completed in 2 years on a set schedule. And that means that we needed to really assume and build in the expectation of that master's level knowledge for every student coming in.
Great, perfect. And then similarly, we get the common question in admissions about the graduate certificate. I think there's, different certificates or certifications in nutrition that people can pursue and think that this is similar to those, quicker that don't need a bachelor's or a master's. Can you kind of clarify the intent for the certificate, the graduate certificate?
Yes, the graduate certificate program was created a couple of years after the master's program began to offer to people who were already a practicing health professional, um, an opportunity if they weren't sure they wanted to take the whole master's degree program, to take a condensed version of it. The graduate certificate students sit in the same classes as the master's students. I mean, virtually, it's all online, but they only take about half of those classes. In general, well, most of the certificate curriculum is composed of courses that are in the second half of the master's program, when we get to the more advanced clinically focused courses.
Great, perfect. So yeah, hopefully that gives a brief overview of the intent for those programs and kind of help you figure out which one's the best fit for you. But again, reach out to admissions if you want to have bigger conversation and just check prerequisites and see which one's the best fit. Now we can move into another frequently asked question, which is what is functional medicine? Why is that a part of the program? How is it a part of the program? So I'll let you guys, since you're the experts, but the IFM, for people who do not know, is the Institute of Functional Medicine. It's an organization that founded and developed many of the functional medicine concepts that we use today. And so we have that partnership and are woven really deeply with them into the curriculum to have that be a part of it. So if you guys wouldn't mind sharing what is functional medicine for people who are not familiar?
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll both have some thoughts to contribute. Functional medicine is a very inclusive discipline of healthcare, and so there's a lot to say. Um, Fundamentally, though, I think functional medicine is two things in the way that we conceive of it and the way we use it in our curricula. It is first kind of a conceptual model. It's a way of looking at human health and illness that doesn't strictly bottle up or define conditions as being in just one organ system or another. It recognizes the places where our physiology, where our organ systems connect, and makes sure that we're looking at all of that overlap rather than just thinking of this is a kidney only disease or this is a brain only disease, because illnesses don't really respect those boundaries, and we need to understand the ways that they interact with all of our body systems. And so this gives us a more comprehensive view of what the underlying imbalances are that can add up to diagnosable illness. So that helps us to prevent, to catch things early, and to make changes that can stop someone from having to have an illness, as well as to better understand when there's a really complex case in front of us, what are the building blocks of the problems that this person is bringing? And that helps us to understand what solutions are going to be most effective for that individual. So it is a very individualized, a very patient-centered, person-centered kind of approach to healthcare. Um, and so all of those concepts are in our minds when we're working with our patients and clients, but functional medicine for us is also a set of concrete tools. These are made up of things in part that we license and bring in from the Institute of Functional Medicine. This gives us things like the Functional Medicine Matrix, the history taking timeline, a variety of other clinical documents and tools that help to organize the patient or client encounter. They give us a roadmap for understanding how to proceed step by step, find out the information we need, and really help someone on that individualized basis. So we want to make sure to provide students with that kind of actionable material so that they know what strategies are going to work best for them.
I would just add that early in my career as a health professional, and I only realized this fully in retrospect, but early on, the broader integrative health field had a whole series of really useful, interesting, often quite effective treatment tools. But what was missing was an organizational structure, a teachable organizational structure that practitioners could use, and a holistic structure that they could use to evaluate a patient and understand what would be most helpful to deliver to them or to suggest to them in terms of a treatment plan. From my point of view, the IFM's functional medicine model is is far and away the best single example of an organizational structure that was developed largely in the early 2000s and has continued to be developed in the years since. So we are happy to weave the functional medicine model as developed by IFM really from the start of our program to the beginning, to the end of our programs.
Great, that's awesome. And can you guys share, is this unique for people who don't know? Is this a unique part of our program that we offer? And that kind of explain that partnership between the IFM, maybe why that was done or the benefits that come from that?
Certainly, this is really something that began with the development of our master's program. So, from the very beginning, a functional medicine approach was used to create the curriculum structure, to create the coursework. And that's something that we've continued with the DCN program as well. It is something that's unique. Most nutrition programs that have a clinical focus don't have a functional medicine focus. And we feel that a functional medicine approach is, for us, the best way to deliver clinical nutrition education because it prepares students to think about the challenging problems that they'll be asked to solve and gives them more applications for the nutritional strategies that they learn. So I think that that is a distinct advantage. The Institute for Functional Medicine works with multiple academic partnerships, so we're not the only one, but we were the first, and also, I believe, took the opportunity to embed perhaps most deeply in the structure of our curricula these functional medicine concepts and tools.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great context. Perfect. And then as we move on to kind of why someone would pursue this field, the benefits of pursuing this field. So there are many reasons, obviously, just a few listed here. But in your guys' opinion, what's the most rewarding part of working in this field?
Oh, helping patients who weren't helped elsewhere. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, among the people who apply to our programs and join them as students, one of the common threads, with some exceptions, but not that many, is that they had an experience either with their own health or something they saw with a family member or a friend or became aware of and saw it to be true, where the involved individual developed a diagnosed health problem, some of them quite severe, some less so, but nonetheless quite bothersome. And like most people in our society do, they went to a conventional medicine practitioner first. And while conventional medicine is successful in helping many people, these were folks who it didn't help. And then they pursued an alternative to that. And either through self-study or through going to a different kind of practitioner, um, succeeded at dealing with that problem where previously they had not succeeded. And when that happens to someone, and I'm sure there are some, at least some, perhaps many of the attendees today for whom this rings true, resonates as something that you've seen too. Um, in general, people that can be life changing. It can be career changing. And in many, many cases, I suspect most, people don't want to stop there. They want to learn more. And so they listen to podcasts and read books and go to talks and so on and so forth. And eventually, some of them decide they want to pursue this kind of program. And so those are, should you choose to apply to our program, one of them, and to be accepted and to enter as a student, that's who you'll be among in terms of your classmates. And the other thing I would add is in terms of what's most satisfying, it's being a practitioner who is helping those patients or clients.
That is really, I think, what it most comes down to. It says at the top bullet point, make a difference in the lives of your patients, and really that difference is so often transformative that it is an honor and humbling to be a part of that kind of healing journey. And that is what our graduates do. I think that there is also a special kind of enjoyment that comes from recognizing that you are on the forefront of a new kind of healthcare that has tremendous healing power, that is under accessed, is underrepresented, and so needs proponents, needs people to help push it forward, to improve access, to get it into more care settings so that the patients and clients who need this help can receive it. We're not at a place where there are enough nutrition experts, nutrition focused healthcare practitioners to meet the needs of all the patients and clients who could benefit from their help. And so that is part of the urgent public health need for there to be more practitioners with the knowledge of the kind that we provide to make sure that we can start to reverse this very disturbing trend of more lifestyle mediated severe chronic illness. This is something that is killing more and more people each year, and we have tools to really help to turn that tide. So that is a major part of why we see this work is so important. Um, I think it's also tremendously rewarding to be able to engage with the entirety of the current scientific evidence and to really synthesize that into the most accurate, most comprehensive treatment approaches that can be designed. I think that oftentimes either patients or clients, sometimes us ourselves, have been in a situation with a healthcare practitioner who's maybe an expert in a different field, but not a nutrition expert. And they'll say, oh, nutrition can't really change your condition. Diet isn't really going to help change the trajectory of this condition for you. And in many cases, that is an incomplete picture. That's just not fully correct. And so we need more voices and more people who are literate in the scientific evidence to be able to say that's not accurate anymore. Our understanding has progressed, and there are so many ways in which the foods that we eat, the other nutritional strategies that we adopt, can change our physiology to improve or in some cases alleviate the kinds of challenging chronic complex conditions that aren't always best served by a more conventional traditional model of healthcare.
Mhm. That makes sense. Yeah, well said. And one thing we get a question about a lot is the career outlook. I know you mentioned that, the need and the demand for this is increased. Could you share a little bit of like the career outlook, how the field is, developing and what people could expect, as far as careers from these programs?
That's such an important question. And the expectation at this point is that the majority of graduates, and this applies to our master's, to our DCN program, for our graduate certificate, the existing healthcare degree and license is going to determine a lot about what those graduates can do. But for master's and DCN, the expectation is that most of our graduates will be in a solo, self-owned kind of practice situation. So that is a more entrepreneurial kind of focus. There is a smaller subset who will be working in a group practice setting, whether that's just a nutrition practice or an integrative practice or another kind of healthcare setting. Those exist and they are increasing, perhaps not as quickly as we would like, but that kind of care is in demand, and we're pleased to see that there are groups, there are organizations trying to deliver this multidisciplinary approach, which includes nutrition. So we look to see more of that. That's also more region dependent and can really just depend on what city, if any, you might be in close enough proximity to find those kinds of opportunities. And so those are the major two categories. There are other sort of less common career pathways that our graduates can carve out for themselves. This includes working in industry, whether that's a food or a supplement kind of industry position. There are instances where our graduates will go on to teach or do sort of public engagement kinds of roles. Those are things, again, that we fully support and would like to see become more common, and we celebrate them when they happen.
Great, yeah. And for people who are newer to the field, we, definitely have a lot of people who are maybe had a, nutrition experience or worked with functional medicine in their personal life, like Dr. Redwood shared, that are new to this and kind of getting a new understanding. Could you explain or just share a little bit about how practice rights, scope of practice can vary depending on where someone's located, and what tips you have for somebody who's like new to this and trying to understand um, what that means and how that affects them.
It's important for anyone entering our programs as a student to check out the legal framework, the scope of practice for someone with a master's degree in nutrition in a state where they are or a state where they're thinking of going. The, the nutritionist profession uh, is at an early to middle stage of its evolution at this point, so that in the US there are 50 different states, 50 different sets of rules and regulations, many of which overlap with each other, but it ranges on one end from a small number of states where nobody but dietitians can deliver this kind of nutrition care to other states on the other end of the spectrum where there is an extremely well-developed licensure situation, well-defined scope of practice, often more expansive than some of the other states. And it's not it's just really important to check out the states you're considering, because the
Mhm.
fact that something is acceptable or unacceptable in some other state doesn't affect you if you are in the particular state you're in. So I guess that's where I'd begin. And in talking about the nutritionist profession being at a somewhat earlier or middle stage of evolution, the trajectory is toward more inclusivity, toward greater practice rights. And as Dr. Brown said, never quite as fast as we would like to see, but steadily moving in that direction, which we are very happy to see, and we try um, to help it develop where in whatever ways we can.
I want to
Yeah.
highlight briefly as well a crucial distinction that Dr. Redwood raised, which is the difference between the nutritionist profession and the dietetics profession.
Mhm.
These are different educational pathways. They have different structures where a dietetics background will begin with a bachelor's degree. And there is also a different clinical emphasis, different areas of focus. And so we are a program that is not a dietetics program. And so it's just very important to recognize that when looking at regulatory frameworks and when planning for what kind of practice activities would be allowed in your state or jurisdiction.
Great, perfect. And that brings us to our next part, which is why specifically to pursue the human nutrition and functional medicine programs at UWS, and what it prepares for. So listed are a few different like key features that I always like to highlight. The flexibility is one thing that a lot of our students that I've worked with have really appreciated if they're working and able to make this flexible and completely online, which is really helpful for that platform. And then, of course, the functional medicine collaboration, like we mentioned, and so much more. So a few different highlights, but I would love to hear you guys speak to some of these features and why you think they're important as a someone begins their career in nutrition.
I would just start by saying that I'm really happy that we are in an era at this point where the internet exists. And because, in part, as I interview students who are applying for or considering applying for the master's program in particular, or the certificate, or as Dr. Brown is generally doing his interviews with DCN applicants,
Mhm.
um, it's clear to me that in the vast majority of cases, these are individuals who would not have been prepared to uproot their lives wherever in North America or elsewhere in the world they are and move to Portland for 2 years. And lovely though Portland can be. I think the online setting is so important. And, and these days, I still ask in those interviews, tell me about, have you taken online courses at the college or university level? I almost never get no for an answer anymore, occasionally so, but it's it's really important to me to emphasize to someone whose familiarity with online education is not that extensive to mention that I have been both a student and a teacher at the college level in both in-person and online settings. From that experience, I have reached certain conclusions. Among these are that each of them has its own potential strengths and its own potential weaknesses. And um, I'll give one example. When I was teaching clinical nutrition to senior students at a chiropractic school in the Midwest before I came out here to Oregon for this to be a director of this program and teach some courses in it, I I taught lecture classes in nutrition. I always tried to really encourage students to participate, to raise their hand, to ask questions, to go back and forth. My experience was that if in a class of, say, 40, maybe 5 or 6 of those students on a regular basis would raise their hand and ask a question and go back and forth with me or with other students, that was pretty good. And the other students, many of whom I know had interesting thoughts going on in their mind because they would come to me to my office afterward and want to talk one-on-one, but they couldn't get over that hump of raising their hand and speaking in front of everybody else. I had a real aha type moment a couple of years after arriving here. Uh, we had online discussions in all of our classes, pretty much every week in every class. And I realized at a certain point that unlike that setting in person, where most of the students basically were in a passive observer mode, in the online discussions, we not only encourage participation, we require it. And to me, that's one example of a way that online education is superior to in person. Now, the in person has its strengths too. You know, you can look people in the eye, you can see their body language, you can go out for a bite to eat afterward, get to know each other. But each has its strengths, and online online education, in my view, is fully as strong as in-person education. And I think that that's not it's a message that's more commonly understood now than it was 10 years ago, let's say, or 20 years ago, certainly. But it's still worth mentioning because it hasn't uh, filtered through to everybody.
I think that's such an important observation, and I am really grateful that UWS has emphasized really throughout the existence of our online programs, giving support to faculty members and program administration to really identify what are best practices in making this kind of education really successful for students, really meaningful to them. And that's something that we have continued to refresh and update our perspective on, because just like we would like our students to continue to update their clinical perspective and practice, we want to make sure that we are continuing to do what is best according to the current understanding of what helps students learn and what helps programs be successful. Um, which is related to, I think, another real key strength of UWS as an institution. All of our programs are built on a foundation of evidence-informed practice. We all prioritize together this commitment to accurately interpreting and applying scientific evidence to inform what we do. And that means that what students learn in our programs is not just facts and material that we convey to them. That's very important, but we also teach them how to think critically about scientific evidence, how to evaluate research studies for their quality and applicability. And those skills enable our graduates to continue to update and upgrade their knowledge even after they leave, after they've graduated. And that kind of flexibility, that ability to take in new information, change our approach in response to the best available evidence, that to me is some of what is necessary to make a really flexible, creatively thinking, and successful practitioner over the long term. And we're really proud that our students are willing to engage in that, not just willing, but excited to engage in that process with us. And that's something that we are honored to see our students really care about in some of the ways that we do as well. Um, This also comes back to the core principle that our programs are designed to be useful to clinical practitioners. So when we say we have a clinical focus, what we mean is that we focus on equipping our students with strategies, approaches that are going to serve them well in practice, that are going to serve their patients and clients well. And rather than just telling students that this is the protocol for this condition or this diagnosis, instead we want to help them think about for the individuals that they will see on a spectrum of different clinical presentations within a single diagnosis category, what might need to be different for one person versus another? How can they create rather than just follow a recipe for care? And so that's something that we value and that our students, I think, benefit tremendously from.
Great, perfect. And you guys both spoke a little bit about the online environment. Can you guys share how accessible are faculty? That's a question we get all the time. I think a concern of that online platform. So just making sure they have access to those people for questions. So any insight you have on that?
The access can occur through a number of pathways. One is that in every single course, aside from the discussion boards that are specific to the content being taught and interacted about, there's also a discussion board called Course Q&A, question and answer, where students can raise any question. Basically, it will be answered by either the instructor or additional teaching staff that we have, which I want to mention. You know, as our program grew, well, we consider engagement between the instructor and students and between knowledgeable support staff and students to be very important. Um, it can occur through that course Q&A. It can occur in some cases, particularly if there's something personal that's included, by emailing the instructor. We have live meetings. In a live meeting, which students are always encouraged to attend, but never required to attend in our program because we have, for a number of reasons, we have students with a whole wide variety of different schedules and other uh, life commitments, you know, family, work, and so on. But students therefore don't have to attend live meetings, but if they do, they can interact in real time with each other and with the faculty member. So there are a number of options available here. We consider the interaction important. I would also add that, you know, if there's ever a time where you feel like, for whatever the reason, that you want to reach out directly to myself or to Dr. Brown, that's fine too. So there are many ways to enable this engagement, some of which are built in to the courses themselves, some of which can occur outside the courses.
Great.
One
Yeah,
other
that's super
piece
helpful. Oh, sorry, go
Sorry to
ahead.
interrupt. Just one other piece that I always like to highlight as well is that in addition to all of those wonderful academically focused engagement opportunities that Dr. Redwood mentioned, we also have a fantastic Office of Student Success with academic advisors that collaborate with students to help facilitate their academic success, whether that's talking through study strategies or other kinds of approaches that will help them get the most out of their coursework, or working through scheduling questions, pretty much anything that is outside of an individual course, they can go ask their academic advisor and they'll either know the answer or they'll coordinate with other departments to find the right person and get them connected. So that keeps students from having to go across all these different university departments trying to find the right person. Their academic advisor can help them with that as well.
Yeah, well
Thanks
said.
for adding that.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And then can you guys share how UWS prepares students for the field or what kind of supports are in place in the program? That's one question we get also a lot in admissions. That's always helpful.
Whenever we can, you know, part of the issue that we confront is that our students are spread out all over North America and in some cases elsewhere in the world. We don't have the ability to connect students to situations uh, far afield if we don't have contacts there. Whenever we can, in our network, connect a student or a recent graduate to someone in the field in their geographical area, or or to talk to them about certain questions, a content area that they, are wondering about, that we feel like if you could connect with them, it would be really helpful. We help to the extent that we can. We have an alumni office that is engaged in this too. And as we graduate more students, we have over 1,000 graduates of our programs at this point, and it rises each year. Um, when we can connect students to people who can be helpful, who are out there practicing in the field, we will do so. To the extent that our own knowledge will lead us to engage in a Zoom meeting or a phone call with a student or recent graduate, and I have these somewhat often. Um, if someone reaches out to me and says, I want to talk about, I want to practice in Southern California, I'm not sure where to start, can you help me? I will have that conversation. I won't necessarily have all of the definitive answers for the specific case, but I'll generally have directions that they often may not have thought of themselves, which will enable them to move forward in their, developing a plan for their practice.
Exactly. There are very often resources that we can provide, and we're always happy to do that. Um, our Alumni Services Office has also recently created a great tool called the Alumni Finder Map that our graduates can opt into, and they can be listed as a source for both referrals and contacts from UWS students and graduates. And so that helps to build a greater network of mutual support among our alumni. So I think that was a great development. I just want to briefly touch on the question of preparedness in terms of success in the field. And there are a lot of ways to define that, but in terms of success with certification exams, the most prominent one is associated with the Certified Nutrition Specialist credential. That is, if our graduates seek a certification, that is the most common one that they will seek. And we find that consistently, because we receive reports from that organization about how our graduates perform relative to graduates of other institutions. And we are pleased to see that we are consistently well above the average performance and pass rate for all test takers, and that in some cases will be in the mid and upper 90s. We've had, of course, variation because these are small sample sizes, but we see a very consistent trend of strongly superior to average performance from our graduates. And that gives us confidence that they are well prepared to take on the additional challenges and certifications that they may wish to in their field. Another piece is that on a more informal basis, we talk with people in nutrition professional environments regularly, and we are able to get their feedback about how our graduates integrate into those environments, how they contribute. And we hear very consistently that graduates of our programs are among the most capable, the most comprehensively adaptable practitioners that they interact with. And I think that speaks to the value of a functional medicine approach, really preparing our students to think through a variety of different kinds of clinical problems and to understand how to interpret new problems that they haven't encountered before.
Great. Yeah, that's super helpful. And then is there any emphasis? I know, of course, there's lots of knowledge and clinical skills, but on business or practice management skills, since it is so common to have a practice or work for a practice that's already established?
In our master's program, we have an elective, which we encourage all students who are not already experienced healthcare practitioners to take. It's called Nutrition Practice Strategies. It has a variety of different content areas. The two main ones are, first of all, motivational interviewing in a nutrition practice setting, and secondly, how to either set up things to consider when setting up a practice or when joining a practice. So that's the main curricular offering we have that
Mhm.
addresses that need. And frankly, that's something that didn't exist when I got here. And I received, when we had students write a reflective essay at the end of their time in the program about what they thought was really good, what they thought could stand some improvement. one of the things that students suggested was it would really be helpful to have that kind of course, and so we instituted it, and it has been a successful course that many students have taken and benefited from.
And seeing the value of that course in our master's program, that really led during the development of our DCN program to embedding that from the beginning. And so we have a course in DCN called Success and Sustainability in Nutrition Practice that develops similar concepts and topic areas from the perspective of one, someone who already has a nutrition practice and they have their own business. How can they develop and refine that to ensure that it stays stable and healthy? And for those who are new or who are planning to start their own practice, what strategies are going to serve them in that context as well?
Great. That's super helpful. And the next question is one of my favorites. Is there anything in our program that is offered that you wish you would have had during your own education, or, if, of course, Dr. Brown, that you're grateful for that was a part of the program, that, you're happy that is now included in this for our future students?
I will say that among the many things I have been grateful for when faced with a challenging patient or client case is the deep detail and emphasis on connecting the underlying molecular basis of these illnesses with potential useful therapeutic interventions. That is kind of the cheat code to understanding what approaches go best with what kinds of clinical problems, laboratory findings. It provides a basis for understanding all of these different disparate pieces of the clinical picture. When we can look at what is the molecular basis of this problem and how does that connect with the molecular mechanism of this intervention, then we can really understand at the deepest level of detail why and how a particular approach might be well positioned to help someone based on their unique specific situation. And having that background and understanding, I felt really made me able to approach both problems I was taught about and those that I wasn't with a kind of confidence that was tremendously reassuring.
I would say for me that, and my original training was longer ago than Dr. Brown, as my gray hair will attest. Um, I, Frankly, I wish that the functional medicine model and the functional medicine matrix that's part of that model, that organizational structure, I wish it had existed back then.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then one thing, Dr. Brown, you already spoke to this, but just to give people more context, I know you mentioned the CNS and how that's the most common, or if people go, that's the most common examination people will pursue. Could you speak to just the kind of differences? I think when people are newer to the field, they're confused, like RD, CNS. Do you have any tips for maybe resources they could, you know, pursue to go kind of understand the differences, or anything you would share to highlight maybe why we are not a dietetics program, why we're not going that pathway?
So, all such good considerations. I'll say at the outset that a fantastic resource for describing the purpose and the nature of the CNS credential is the American Nutrition Association. That is the larger nutritionist focused nutrition organization that has under its umbrella the CNS credential. And so they've provided a lot of really useful resources, not just about the purpose and the process, although that's valuable, but also to understand how the regulatory frameworks in different states relate to, align with, or don't align with the CNS pathway. And so I think that is a really valuable resource for someone who is newer to the field and is looking to understand the landscape a little bit more. And in general terms, first I'll say that many of the students in our programs are registered dietitians. They come from a dietetics background, and we really respect and value that educational pathway. A couple of ways in which it's different from the nutrition approach that we take. Number one, a dietetics approach to nutrition generally will emphasize in the educational stages, emphasize what we might call supportive care. These are nutrition strategies that help prevent someone's diagnosed illness from getting worse because of what they eat or the other nutrition and food related behaviors that they follow. And that is very important that that correlates to, in a hospital setting, helping to inform a chronic kidney disease patient about what changes in their diet will help prevent progression of that illness and prevent potentially life-threatening complications. It's really important information. They will also calculate and prepare and administer things like parenteral nutrition for those who are unable or it's clinically unwise for them to be consuming food by mouth. So those kinds of clinical activities are very much in the domain of dietitians. Those aren't elements that we emphasize in our programs. Instead, we look for how food can be used in a healing context and other nutritional therapeutics can be used in a healing context for complex chronic illnesses. So we might call that a more therapeutic nutrition focus, where we're looking at specifically clinical nutrition interventions to help reverse the pathophysiology, the molecular basis, the why of these illnesses. And that emphasis just takes us in a different direction, and it takes our graduates in different directions as well. And so it is not uncommon for students who come to us from a dietetics background to tell us this feels like the missing piece, that I really valued a lot of what I got in my education, but I felt like there was more to learn in the direction of addressing these major lifestyle mediated illnesses that are claiming so many lives and so much of our health. And so that sort of philosophically or conceptually is kind of the basis of the difference. In practical terms, registered dietitians are more likely to be found, as I mentioned, in inpatient hospital settings, in a more conventional outpatient medical office, whereas a clinical nutritionist is more often going to be working in an integrative, multidisciplinary, more holistic kind of care setting, and will be, again, using their knowledge in ways that is typically addressed to providing therapy, providing treatment for challenging complex conditions.
Great, that's super helpful. Perfect. So now we can move on to just a message to our new students, a message to applicants. We wanted to just take a moment and address these particular groups as people are either preparing to start with us at UWS, which we're so excited for. And I know I'm working with many of you, so it's exciting to help you get started on that next step in your career. So we wanted to take a moment. Do you guys have any advice for new students joining our program?
Yes. And this is true. I'm speaking to uh, master's degree programs in general, not just ours and not just healthcare. And I think Dr. Brown can address the extent to which this applies to the DCN. Um, we ask our instructors to construct their courses so that the average student, and of course, averages are made up of some people higher, some lower, but that the average student would need to devote something in the vicinity of 3 hours per credit per week to to the required parts of their coursework. So that's one thing about time management. We would never discourage students from diving deeper and pursuing further learning beyond the required content in a class, but it's really important for any student as well as for ourselves not to overextend past our limits, our physical limits, our emotional limits. And so we actually believe in this work-life balance that we profess, and uh, and not that I or we are perfect exemplars in every moment in our lives, but it's something that we and all of our faculty take seriously. And so I think that's an important thing for me to mention. Dr. Brown, do you want to add something to this?
Well, first of all, that's absolutely a consistent thread throughout all of our programs. And I would say that we really encourage on that basis for students to reach out to their instructors, to us, to myself and Dr. Redwood, when there are concerns that they have about their ability to meet the requirements in their courses, especially if there is something that is causing an unavoidable absence, something related to health needs, health problems, care needs for immediate family members, all of those considerations we we care about and want to know about so that we can help. And we will often have a basis for some of those severe unavoidable disruptions to modify deadlines, to approve extensions. And so we really want to know when students are experiencing those kinds of severe challenges so that we can help. And then when there is a challenge that might be less severe, we still want to know so that we can find other ways to support. And that's a place where our academic advisors can often be a really valuable resource as well, because they have strategies that also extend to things like time management, preventing burnout and overwhelm, developing a schedule that is sustainable. Those kinds of factors, especially when they're set up early or in advance, do so much good at reducing the overall stress and friction and cognitive load outside the coursework of being in a program. So I think those are important considerations and supports that we're happy to be able to provide.
Great. Yeah, that's well said. And what are some qualities of students who tend to thrive in the program or the field?
There are a great many. And, kind of connecting with what we just shared, one of the strongest, I think, predictors of student success in our programs is that willingness to reach out proactively, whether to ask questions and add to their own knowledge, to seek support when there's something that they need help with. Those kinds of outreach pay off tremendously for students. And so we really encourage that kind of ongoing proactive communication. Um, I think that something that our students have in common that serves them and our profession well is curiosity. Students join our programs in part because they want to know why. Why do these illnesses happen? Why do they happen in the way that they do? Why are they increasing in prevalence in many cases? And what can we do about it? And so those kinds of deeper questions, I think, just reveal a kind of ongoing curiosity that provides the energy for what we do. There is a lot of work and a lot of challenge involved with a rigorous academic program, and they need to be rigorous because we need to be sure that our graduates are able to provide the public with safe, effective strategies, and that just requires a lot of knowledge to do well. And so the driver, the motivation to continue in that process, I think for so many of our students comes from this deep intrinsic curiosity to know, again, why these conditions happen and how we can help.
I would also add, and it's similar to what Dr. Brown just said, that open-mindedness and the willingness to change one's opinion or one's mind if new research or new evidence emerges, which I have personally experienced, over the course of my career, where I had certain conclusions, opinions, beliefs, and and eventually there was enough research showing that um, those views were either incomplete or now inaccurate. That I changed the way I practiced in some ways and the way I teach. There are certain parts of nutrition where evidence emerged, after 2005 or after 2015, which led me to change the content of my class because something that I had taught was effective, was not, and vice versa. I think, and basically that is the scientific perspective. It's
Mhm.
asking the questions, as Dr. Brown was speaking to, in terms of the curiosity, and then being open to changing our mind when the evidence indicates that that's appropriate.
Great, thank you. And then for applicants, as from an admissions perspective, since I'm one of the admissions counselors here and work with lots of folks, my biggest recommendation is to really apply early, ensuring that you meet with a admissions counselor, just to make sure you have the prerequisites that you need. If there's anything that's needed, that you give yourself plenty of time to work on those, complete those, since those are needed before the program starts and are going to be really helpful, as they mentioned, for once you enter into the program. So meeting with admissions team, making a plan for prereqs, applying early, and then like they said, asking questions if you need any help or need any clarification on anything, never hesitating to reach out. From your guys' perspective, as someone who is applying, or maybe they're not even at that point, they're just kind of researching, trying to understand what's the best fit. Do you have any recommendations for things they could explore, read? Um, anyone they should reach out to shadow, anything like that that would be helpful before applying to make sure this is the right fit.
I think that one good starting point, and you alluded to this with the idea of finding a contact to shadow. I think that a good starting point is to survey locally if they're living in
Mhm.
the place where they intend to practice. What kinds of practitioners are in their area who work with clinical nutrition as a primary modality? And are any of them open to either a conversation or a shadowing opportunity? Those kinds of engagement really help to make real what is this kind of healthcare. Now, we don't want to overgeneralize because different practitioners do things very differently. And so sometimes it's very helpful to come away from a shadowing experience understanding, well, that's not really the approach that I'd like to take. And so doing a series of these connections can help make more clear what are the parts that are most likely common to the profession, what are the parts that are just about this individual's approach. But I think doing that, having the conversations, not only builds information in a really helpful way, but it also builds someone's budding professional network. It helps to start to make familiar to you people who you might be sharing referrals with later, collaborating in other ways, or just sharing the profession as colleagues. And so I think it's never too early to start developing that familiarity and helping others to become familiar with you.
Great, thank you. And now we can move on to questions. If there's any questions, feel free again to drop those in the Q&A on the Zoom room so that you can get those answered. So opening it up to the audience, and then as those trickle in, I have some on here for some additional questions in case we haven't covered it so far. So let's see.
And briefly, I wanted
Yeah.
to follow up with a quick clarification
Hmm.
because earlier in discussing our CNS exam pass rates, I think I might have misspoken. What I intended to say was that the trend is to see our exam pass rates in the mid to high 80s or above. And that really does vary per exam cycle, but that is what we tend to see, sort of high 80s as the most common area where our students land. So again, well above the national averages and something that we continue to be proud of.
Perfect. Thank you.
I see a question that someone asked
Oh yeah,
in
feel
the
free.
Q&A. With the question is from Raina. How engaging are the classes? I've taken some classes that are done well, and then some that just have us read the textbook, which is not engaging. You
Hmm.
will not get any classes in any of our programs that do not involve serious engagement, do not both encourage and require engagement between student and teaching staff members. I mean, we are aware that there are some online learning approaches that don't involve this engagement. We are 100% not, we have never wanted to go that route and we never will. So there will be engagement. There will be engagement on discussion boards. There will be engagement in live meetings. There will be engagement on that course Q&A. There will be engagement in whatever way students want to reach out to us. And I see a follow-up here. Are there textbooks or are all materials online? This is related because there was just a question
Hmm.
relating to a
Perfect.
textbook. Many of our classes have a required textbook. Many of our classes do not. I mean, in some cases, there's not really a textbook that would meet the need. In some cases, there really is. So you'll get both. In terms of all materials being online, in some courses, yes, in some cases, no. But also, whenever we are able to get an electronic version, to have our library secure a subscription to an electronic version of a textbook, we do it. And we review that every quarter. Our librarians go and see, oh, did such and such a publisher finally, put an online version, make an online version available. If we can do it, we do it. But that's partly, so there are some textbooks that you would need to purchase. There are some where you'll be able to access it for free through our library electronically. There's some courses where all the materials are online.
Yes, thank you. And if anyone's curious to see that textbook list, admissions has access to some different materials that we can send over if you're curious about what curriculum, what classes, what textbooks are included. So feel free to reach out to admissions if you want to see that.
There's also a question that Alina asked early and then just asked again because
Mm.
our hour is almost up, I guess.
Yes.
Um, uh, it's about AI. And
Mm.
like everyone else throughout our society and certainly throughout the educational system and colleges and universities, we are working on this. Our current policy is that AI use is not permitted unless the instructor specifies that it is and explains the circumstances in which it's okay to use it. Dr. Brown, if you want to add something to that, that would be fine.
Yes, I mean, there's certainly a lot to say. That is our academic integrity piece, and that's so important because what students need to obtain through their education with us is, among many other things, a robust set of critical thinking strategies that have been assessed authentically, and students have been provided feedback and growth opportunities through that assessment process. That's so much of what the structure of an academic program provides that is beneficial. And so, what we don't want is for AI tools to be used as substitutes for the kind of critical thought that students need to develop and practice and continue to hone. As far as industry impacts, at this point, it is very early in terms of functional medicine sort of adoption or the attempted development of AI tools to support clinical practice in functional medicine. My sense, just on a personal basis, is that they are in such an early stage of development that they don't represent a real shift in the ways that functional medicine practice is currently happening or is likely to happen in the immediate future. There's always the potential for a major leap, a major improvement in the way that some of these large language models are developed and trained. And I know that there are efforts underway to curate material that trains an AI on a more validated set of scientific and medical information and then makes that useful or more appropriate to integrate into a clinical decision-making process. These are things that very well may happen and may potentially transform some of the ways in which clinical practice is delivered. At this point, we're not there yet, and we absolutely need human beings with their robust knowledge and discernment to be able to make the clinical decisions that impact the health of our patients and clients. And so that is an unwavering commitment that we have to make sure that the human beings we train are responsible and effective practitioners of this kind of healthcare. We also want to keep them informed. And so we have some faculty members that are very interested in and engaged with and are evaluating consistently what are the current potential applications of AI in clinical practice and in education. So we're not ignoring it, but we are also not substituting it for the core skill set that our students need to acquire through their education with us.
Liddy, do you want us to answer other questions?
We, are at time, so we can definitely wrap this up. And then if anyone has questions, any additional questions that you put in the chat weren't answered, or if you haven't, gotten a chance to put those in there yet, please email those to this admissions inbox. We can either have an admissions counselor follow up with you, or if it's a program director specific question, we can, get their insight so that you can get their perspective as well. But we are at time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. But I just want to say thank you all so much for joining, and especially to our program directors who, have a busy schedule, and we just really appreciate you always sharing your insight and knowledge on this.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you all.